Today, most men walk on thin ice. They've been told repeatedly that extreme agreeability is the key to everything, that always agreeing is the right path, and that being the good guy is enough to be desired. But then, why is it that the more you try to please her, the more she seems to drift away? Why does all that excessive attention end up becoming the poison that destroys her interest? It seems absurd, politically incorrect, even dangerous to say. But more than 500 years ago, a man who observed the inner workings of power and human nature from the dark corners of Italian palaces wrote down a truth that modern society prefers to ignore. Niccolò Machiavelli didn't write for those seeking comfort, but for those who wish to understand the reality of power. And within that reality, there is a phrase that has survived the passage of centuries. Fortune is a woman, and to possess her, one must treat her with force. But be careful. We're not talking about violence. Machiavelli was a brilliant strategist, not a savage. What he really meant was something much deeper: strength of character, audacity, and the will to lead. Machiavelli understood that female psychology, like fortune, doesn't respond to pleading, passivity, or the constant entreaties of a man who doesn't even know who he is. It responds to audacity. In this video, we're going to dissect the anatomy of desire from one of history's most unflinching perspectives. We're going to discover why your excessive chivalry is killing the spark, and how to apply the principles of the prince to become a man impossible to ignore. If you're easily offended, this video isn't for you. But if you truly want to understand the difference between being a nice guy and being a man a woman respects, stick around until the end, because what I'm going to show you in part 4 will completely change the way you view rejection. And before we continue, I want to clarify that this video is a philosophical and historical analysis of Machiavelli's The Prince. All content is for educational purposes and should not be interpreted literally as advice on conduct, but rather as a study of the psychology of power in the 16th century. 1. The paradox of kindness and Machiavellian virtue. Machiavelli introduced an essential concept, virtue, and he wasn't talking about the Christian virtue of turning the other cheek, but about energy, effectiveness, and willpower. For Machiavelli, a man without virtue is a man completely at the mercy of fate. In modern relationships, the average man has confused being kind with being harmless. Think about this scene. You ask her what she wants for dinner. She replies, "I don't know." And you respond, "Whatever you want, love." Do you think you're being considerate? Machiavelli would say that what you're demonstrating is a complete lack of leadership. You're surrendering control. When she notices you can't even decide where to eat, she subconsciously assumes you couldn't guide her through life's storms either. A direct quote from Machiavelli: "He who wishes to be loved rather than feared fails at the first difficulty." In terms of attraction, fear doesn't mean fear of being hurt. It means respect for your boundaries and fear of losing you. If she knows that no matter how she treats you, you'll still be there begging for attention, then you've already lost the game. She wants to feel she's in front of a man capable of saying no. The perfect example is the modern-day simp, the man who lavishes validation, comments on every photo, and writes huge love letters before even earning her respect. He's being the kind of man Machiavelli would describe as a prince who surrenders his strongholds before the war even begins. She doesn't want a servant. She wants a sovereign. She wants to perceive that you have options, that there is a purpose in your life greater than her, and that if she doesn't meet your standards, you have the strength to leave. Even evolutionary psychology supports Machiavelli's ideas. Women biologically seek security and direction. Excessive kindness is often perceived as a mask of weakness. When Machiavelli states that fortune or woman favors the young and bold, he is talking about men who don't ask permission to exist, but rather take action. If you make a woman a priority before she even sees you as a worthwhile option, you are breaking the first law of power. Never show neediness, because neediness is the opposite of status. 2. The mirror of indifference and scarcity. Machiavelli wrote, "Men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance." What does this reveal about value? That we value here,